Samsung's Z Fold 6 or the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro. Which one of these two Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 flagship foldables should you go for? Well, this video is for you because I'm going to be comparing them in depth. I'll take a look at their build quality, their screens, inner and outer, cameras, including camera comparison, their loudspeakers side by side, which one is going to sound better, battery life, charge time, and overall my thoughts on which one of these is best at what. Okay, outer screens, you see that there is a difference in the size. We're talking about here 6.3 inches with the Z Fold 6 versus 6.53 inches. So we do get quite a bit more screen size, and naturally that translates into a larger inner screen, which is just over 8 inches. 8.03 with the inner screen of our Z Fold 3 Pro. That's the model I'm covering here. They do have another version, which is just the Z Fold 3, but I don't have that, so I'll be comparing what I do have here. So narrower outer screen here with the Samsung. Does it make it more difficult to type on? Now, if I was being really nitpicky, yeah, I could say, all right, you have to be a little bit more accurate when you do type with this keyboard. Just be a bit more careful when you're typing on it. That's it. It's nothing like it was with, if you remember, the Z Fold 2, which was super narrow, that screen, and I did not like it. I got an amazing amount of typos. It was very hard to get used to. You finally do, but there we go. And there's no stylus support with that outer screen with the Samsung, and no stylus support at all with the Vivo. So it's one big reason. If you use the stylus, then straight away, this is your phone that you want to go for. Okay, front-facing cameras, 32 versus 10. This doesn't have 1080p video, the front-facing camera, which is a downside, yes. But of course, both of these phones, you can run their cameras and then you can use the outer screen as a preview and then use those rear cameras. So rear cameras, there's a difference here. We've got Zeiss branding, and they have a special dedicated V3 chip. It's like an ISP that's handling the image processing, whereas with the Samsung, it's using Qualcomm's ISP with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. Both of the phones have them. So 12 megapixel ultra wide versus a 50 megapixel ultra wide versus 50 megapixel main versus 50 megapixel main here too. And then the 3 times optical zoom camera on both. It's the same, but we have periscopic versus non-periscopic, 10 megapixels versus 64. So that gives it a lot more room to crop in the Vivo, and I'll get onto camera comparison later in the review and you'll see that there is a difference. Bit of a spoiler here, you do get the superior cameras and superior hardware with the Vivo, but what about video? Okay, talk more about that too later on. Now, battery capacity, big change, big difference I should say here, 4400 versus 5700. Yes, a lot more battery within the Vivo, but that must of course impact on the weight, right? Must be super heavy. Well, it is in fact lighter than the Samsung. So holding them, I can't distinguish a difference of 3 grams because that is it. We're talking about 236 grams versus here 239. So it's indistinguishable when you're holding them and using like this. Thickness, however, you do notice that. So let's take a look. We have here folded 11.2 with the Vivo versus 12.1. So that's not much of a difference at all, really. Considering they're foldables, they are going to be a little bit more thicker. Alert slider button, similar to what you get with, say, a OnePlus or what we used to have with the iPhone. So you can flick it into silent mode without even touching and looking at it. Very good. There, 2 nano SIMs, whereas it is down the bottom with our Vivo. Now, both of them have just stereo loudspeakers, and I'll compare them later on. We have video out with both of them, Type-C ports, a USB 3.2. However, Samsung has Samsung DeX, their desktop mode, and it's so much better than just the simple clone display we get with the Vivo. Unfortunately, they have not developed their software to give us a desktop experience mode, which is a little disappointing. Microphone's down here, microphone there. At the top of the Vivo, you do get an IR transmitter. If you need that, well, it's got it. Both of them, of course, do fold completely closed, no gap. Remember, the earlier folds used to have a gap, but you don't get that at all. Camera modules stick out a little. Now, when you unfold them, the difference in the thickness is quite a lot. Well, not really, but in terms of foldables, it is. So we are looking at here with the Vivo, the X Fold 3 Pro. This is 5.2 millimeters, and our Samsung, that is a little bit thicker, but not by much. We're talking 0.5 millimeter, so this is 5.6. Notice how both of them don't look like they open up 100% flat. They're not like a perfect 180 degrees here. That's to do with the screen. I think it's to stop too much stress on the screen itself. But if I give it a bit of a push, but that's hardly anything. Then it's completely flat. So there's a little bit of flex in that. Now the hinges on both, build quality on both feels very good. I'd have to say using them now, the hinge, a bit more of a spring to the end of the hinge when you open it with the Vivo. It's using a carbon fiber hinge. They've reduced the hinge weight too, of course, with the Samsung. They revised that a little bit, but really similar. I think maybe the edge goes to the Samsung. It's a slightly better feeling hinge, but very good. Both of them, you can have these screens sort of popped up at certain angles for that flex mode if you do want to do that. Now, safety glass, or should I say shatter-resistant glass that is on these. We do have a matte finish on the back of them, so resist fingerprints. A bit of a sparkle to the Vivo. Fingerprints, you see some of them. Now, because I've got a lighter color, this is in fact pink, although it's probably looking white. Certain angles it looks more pinkish. It's a very light tone of pink. You can see slight smudges too as well. Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the rear, Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front. And unknown, maybe Dragon Tail or something similar with our Vivo using a Chinese brand of shatter-resistant glass. Now, do they have water dust protection? With the Vivo, it's IPX8 resistance, and then we have IP48. So that means 1.5 meters for both of these phones for 30 minutes. So if you drop it in to the sink or something, pull it out straight away. But if it was up to 30 minutes, in theory, it would be okay. And no, I'm not going to test that out. I don't want to test these expensive phones and have something go horribly wrong. Okay, creases. Let's take a look at that before I start getting into the screens. Both of them are foldables, so they have that crease. Now, it is more noticeable, I think, with the Z Fold 6. Now, when I run my finger over that, yeah, I can feel that reasonable amount. Let's take a look at the Fold. The Fold here, it's wider but flatter the crease. And to me, at least when I look at them both, I think it means that the crease just stands out a little less. Now, some people may disagree with that, but I think the crease is a little bit better with the X there, the X Fold 3 Pro. Now, fingerprint readers, big difference here. We have ultrasonic, so as soon as I tap that, that's how quick it is. Amazing fingerprint reader. I cannot deny that the Vivo has the best fingerprint readers here. And I'll show you the outer screen is the same, so I can just quickly tap it, bam. And it's very secure, that unlocks really good. It's next level compared to optical. Now, the capacitive, old-fashioned tech, really, you could say, compared to ultrasonic, does work very well here with the Samsung. And, whoops, I'm speaking too soon. Okay, what? Okay, that must have been me. It shouldn't be that bad. I'll try that again. Okay, press it. Now, oh, okay. Fingerprint does, okay, I need to wipe the sensor. Oh dear, no, why is it so bad? Okay, I don't know what's going on here. I've blocked myself out with that one, but it's normally good. Take my word for it. I'm not trying to defend Samsung here. I don't know what's gone wrong there. It's not wet, it's not dirty, but it is what it is. I'm not going to edit that out. So fingerprint reader, yeah, hands down the best with our Vivo X Fold 3 Pro. All right, I need to try that fingerprint scanner again, and I did include that other footage because I think it's important to keep it there. Let's do this again. Because if it doesn't, there we go, finally, it works properly. It must have been my fault, okay? The Samsung guys out there, I'm not trying to make it look bad, all right? But it must have been a bit of dirt on my thumb or something, maybe a little bit of sweat, I don't know, but the Vivo had no issues with it. Anyway, inner screens, they are AMOLED, they are 120 Hz, both very smooth, fluid. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM with the Vivo model here with 512 gigabytes of storage. This has 512 gigabytes of storage. 12 gigabytes of RAM is what it caps out at, the Samsung. Unfortunately, other capacities don't give you more RAM. Does it make a difference? I don't think so. I think 12 is fine, unless you're some crazy multitasker that runs 3 games at the same time and you are on social media running videos, whatever, with your multitasking, then okay, maybe with that one issue case. So the folds, as I mentioned, the creases on both of them, they have a little bit of that, but in use, you can't see them really now when you're using it, so it's not an issue. Squared off edges on both. I do like the fact we have the under-display camera here with the Samsung. It means it's nice and clean. We don't have that horrible cutout in the corner, but you can always see a slightly different shade. It's only 4 megapixels, this camera. It's only good for video, really. So should they have even put it there, maybe, Samsung? I don't know, but I do like what Vivo has done. Now you can see it, that ugly cutout but they pushed it into the right-hand corner, kind of getting it out of the way. It's 32 megapixels. It does take decent enough photos, and video quality looks a little bit clearer. And that gets the win for the inner cameras there. I think it's the Vivo's the best. Screen size and just being bigger, better. But I need to talk about the brightness of both of them. Now, these claims that they have, these companies, especially the Chinese, I don't know about the Koreans, I think it's fine, 2600 nits. They claim, this is HDR content, Vivo, that it can get up to 4500 nits. Now, I've never been able to measure anywhere close to that. I get around 1400 nits on both of them. This is a similar kind of brightness. I don't get any of their claimed figures. And yes, this is playing HDR content. So what I am really interested in is just what is it like in direct sunlight. So you can see now, I had them side by side. Both of them look about the same. So there's no massive difference here. What I did notice is that the Samsung will dim down a little bit quicker, the brightness, after the phone heats up a little bit. The same does happen with the Vivo too. So both of them suffer from screen dimming when it's getting hot, but it happens earlier with the Samsung. That's just one thing to point out. Outer screens now, looking at those two, that they are really similar. They have a brightness claim, Vivo, of 4500 nits too, with that outer screen, which I don't believe. And the Samsung's outer screen, the cover display, that one, I don't think it's as bright. It's supposed to be 1600 nits, but it's still fine and looks just like the Vivo's. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the software side of things, but briefly summarize here because I can get too deep into this and it will become extremely boring if it's not boring enough already. So multitasking, yes, of course, you can set up your app so it can have, or which I've already done here. I've got the UI here. I have Play Store. I can go and open up YouTube, my Gmails, whatever. You can run these different apps. You can also set them up to be a floatable screen here if you want. So I don't know why. Okay, that app wants to run that way. So you've got the option here with the Vivo, and it's very similar with the Samsung too as well. So I can go in here and have this as, okay, we'll set split screen. So we've got those two set up there. And if I can go into another app, which one here, which is, okay, our Google Maps. And this one allows me to run small window. Okay, so I can have those. I can bring back what I was just looking at there, and multitasking is very good. So you can have 3 apps. I can open up even more windows. The RAM's going to make the performance a little bit smoother there. And of course, with Samsung, it really is the same kind of thing. And you could say that, well, Vivo has probably copied them on that. Now, I do find that it is Samsung's DeX, for me, that is just more well optimized for foldables. I think that Samsung's experience is coming through, and it does show when you get into using these phones. There's a lot of different features. So the same kind of thing here. I decide that I want to have just a windowed app here. I can do that. I've got the options if you tap here, okay, on how I want to run it. Make it full screen, make it split screen, so go and do that. And you get the idea that I'm here with Google Play. And it's the same kind of thing. That is very similar, but you have, again, as I mentioned, the desktop mode. You have a lot of their AI features, the translate features that Vivo is simply lacking in all that area. They haven't pushed too hard into that. They've got a little bit, but not as much as Samsung. So you can go in, you can find an older video here, or one of my videos, any video that you've taken, and I can tap now, watch this. I can slow that down and make... Can't slow down this type of video. Oh, okay. Because it's 8K. All right. So it doesn't want 8K video. So let me just do that again. I'll run this video here, and I can tap now, and I can turn it, you can see that, into a slow motion video. Not that you probably want to do that, but it's very clever, and the quality is actually surprisingly good. That's 4K. It'll turn it into a slow motion clip, which... beforehand, you'd have to shoot slow motion to start with. So that's really interesting. You then have their other features, for example, editing some of the images if you wanted to use Galaxy A on that. You can change some of the things, remove the background. If I wanted to circle and say, well, you know what? I don't want my daughter to be holding our new kitten called Snow. And I can tap and hold here. Or maybe I want Snow to be down here. That's probably not going to work with this style of image, but I can go along and say, no, remove him, and get it to generate that image. So there's a lot of clever things built in. I'm only scratching the surface here. There's so much. Circle to search as well. And they have that sketch to AI. So there's a lot of different things. I will say that it is getting a lot better with the Vivo, but I've ranted on enough about the software. Hands down for me, still is Samsung, but only just. Only just. Okay, there are some other interesting things I do want to point out. So when you first get both of these phones, bloatware is something I mention in all my videos. No one gets off with me not mentioning this. There is a bit with the Vivo, as you can see, but most of them are their system apps. With Samsung, you do have, say, Facebook, Spotify, and some Microsoft applications. And then they do double up on their own apps because, for example, they've got their own wallet, Samsung Wallet, their own browser, and another few other things that's under the Samsung folder, where Vivo have got a couple of those, but they're not doubling up on apps that you already use. Although I do think they have their own browser too as well. There it is. Okay, browser, and we've got Chrome. Doesn't make sense why they do that. So there's a little bit of bloatware in both of them, but they're not as bad as some of the other Chinese brands that I cover. Battery life, there is a surprisingly huge difference. Now, I had these phones set to the same brightness, and because the Samsung, you can't force it directly on 120 hertz. It's called like smart refresh or something like that. So it will scale from, say, 60 to 100. This one I set to an auto refresh rate as well with our Vivo X Fold 3 Pro. So it did get a huge score, massive difference, actually. I can't believe how big it is. But then again, because we're looking at a much larger battery. So 5700 versus 4400 is a huge difference when you're talking about the larger screens. Of course, Vivo has a larger phone. They can fit in a better battery, and it's a carbon silicon battery versus the old, we have old chemical setup there. So there's some other changes there in too in that. Charging speeds, there's no contest. 26 minutes to fully charge from 18% with the Vivo versus I went from 16, but it hasn't recorded that correctly, but it's 1 hour and 60 minutes to fully charge it. 25 watts versus 100, I believe it is, with the Vivo, even though the charger included is 120 watts. That's another thing. You get a case, you get a charger in the box with the Vivo, and you don't with this. You just get the charging cable. That's it. You need to supply your case or charger. You don't even get the S Pen either with this model. And of course, I'll mention it again, no stylus support with the Vivo. Big difference with synthetic benchmarks. I mean, massive difference. We've got over 500,000 points more with the X Fold 3 Pro versus our Z Fold 6. They're running the same chipset. It's the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. But that is the difference on what it's like, because this one, as I'll show you shortly, thermal throttles a little bit less, so that is why we have that massive difference. But look at the GPU difference. It's huge. We're talking almost double here, 482,000 versus 877,000. That's a big difference. And do you notice it in games? Yes and no. Storage speeds, there is a difference. It gets a higher score with the Antutu storage test with our Fold. Now, why does it get the higher test? When you look at the read speeds, well, hang on, they're faster with the Samsung, but the writes are faster with the Vivo. But the important one is this. This is the most important one. The random access reads and writes are a lot higher than our Samsung. In fact, almost double. Look at that, the reads for random. And the writes are very similar. So that's why it gets a much better score there. So the fast internal storage, and both of these are UFS 4.0 and both 512 gigabytes of storage. Throttling test here, you'll see that both of them do throttle heavily, not an amazing score, but this is what the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is like in my experience, unless it is fan cooled. But the time they throttle is slightly different, and then how they do drop down on performance. So stability, 57.3 versus 53.7. The Vivo is slightly ahead in the lowest loop. But you want to look at this graph here. So you can see it's the Samsung starts to drop off at the 2-minute mark. This drops off at the 3-minute mark, but continues along a little bit better. There's points. They're still holding around the 3,000. So they're similar, the lines, when you look at them. So there's not that much in it. Both of them throttle too much, I think. And thermals, wow, 41 degrees is what it got up to versus 40. Basically the same. Frame rate, 1 frame per second faster. And the low is 2 higher than the Z Fold 6. So there's not a lot in it with this test. We lost 9% battery, but it's got a larger battery versus exactly 10% there. So both of them, they throttle when pushed very hard, and all of the foldables and all the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3s are doing this. Okay, so gaming with a game that is very demanding. This is Genshin Impact. I've got it on the max settings on both of these, and obviously I can't game properly with 2 of these at the same time. I really need to have another head, and another 2 arms to be able to do that comfortably. But what I have found playing them both individually is that it's very similar to what you see with that 3D Mark Synthetic score, that it will throttle first, and you'll see this in some areas of the map with the Z Fold 6, where it takes a little bit longer for this to start to throttle, and you see those frame dips. In general, it seems to me that, although I'm in different areas of the map here because I can't have the same account logged in twice, you probably know that, but anyway, it just does feel that it's a bit smooth, and maybe you're seeing this when I look around here, just quickly, that it does seem to be smoother on our Vivo. Probably the RAM helping, and the fact that it did get a synthetic benchmark score, what was it, about 500,000 points higher, which is quite a lot. But both of them do throttle, okay? And when you're playing, they're similar. So don't really let that put you off. However, if you're really into your games and you game a lot, that's your phone. The X Fold 3 Pro. Cool quality on both of them. I have not noticed really any major differences. I'm using the same network, and that has probably got a lot to do with it. The earpieces sound good on both, doubling as loudspeakers. Microphones good on both. The other end saying that it sounded fine, no issues, and they both have active noise cancellation. Haptics. Okay, there's a difference because with the Samsung, you can scale up the haptics intensity. I like this, and I think the haptics, when you do this, feel better with the Z Fold 6 when you're typing away on the keyboard. It's noticeable. I do like it. Nice little short pulses that have a good, reasonable amount of strength to them. Loudspeakers, similar setup. So either side, and then either side, dual loudspeakers. I'll play one phone first, followed by the next, and we'll have a listen to which one sounds the best. And over to the cameras now between the X Fold 3 and the Z Fold 6. So it's the X Fold 3 with the outer camera with video performance that does fail this one because it's only 1080p. You get 4K 60, 4K 30 with our Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6. However, of course, both of these phones, you can use the cover screens as viewfinders and the rear cameras as your vlogging camera. So there is a better quality that you can get with both of the phones here. But as it stands with the outer screens for the video vlog footage, yes, Samsung takes this one here with that 4K footage. Rear cameras now with both, so they are currently set to 4K 30 frames per second. They can do 4K 60 and they can both do 8K 30 frames per second. That one I will test side by side shortly just after this clip. So optical image stabilization, 50 megapixel main cameras here. Both of them do use electronic image stabilization. And quality wise, yeah, they're looking very, very similar. I need to look at this on my monitor side by side, but what I can see in the viewfinder is they both look almost identical. Now we'll go over to the ultra wide camera. It's 15 millimeters with our Vivo, and it's not quite as wide as what we get with the Samsung, which I believe is 14 millimeters. It's got a wider field of view, and it could just be down to the electronic image stabilization. So both here seem to be quite steady, but it looks to me like the Samsung ultra-wide footage does look a little bit better. Now zoom cameras, 3 times optical on both, so I'll go over to them. So that's a 3 times optical camera with the Vivo, and 3 times optical now with the Samsung. And they are both looking quite steady when I hold them. Just apply some digital zoom. So I take it up to 5 times with the Samsung, and 5 times now with the Vivo. Which one do you think is the best when it comes to video performance with the zoom cameras, the main and the ultra wide? Let me know in the comments. Very quickly now, 8K footage. So it seems that the Samsung does have steadier footage, and it looks to me like the X Fold 3 is not using electronic image stabilization with 8K video footage. I don't know why Vivo has done this. Surely it must be a bug. I do have it enabled. We've only got the optical image stabilization, so as I walk about you can see it is shaking a little more. However, if it was steady, I think that the Vivo footage does seem to be a little bit sharper than the Samsung's. So it was obvious that Samsung won when it came to video quality, but what about stills? This is an indoor shot, which is a little bit more difficult, portrait mode on both of them. The Samsung at first glance, better skin tones, right? But when you crop in, you see that it's got too much over sharpening, there's a lot of noise, there's grain to the image, and sadly it kind of destroys this photo, and it is using last gen sensors. Still indoors, and this is the new Cat Snow, and you'll see that at 3x optical, both of them, they're reasonably good photos, but different color science when it comes to the Vivo using the Zeiss Natural preset, and when you crop in, you can see a little bit of noise coming into that Samsung photo. I just think that the Vivo shot is more pleasant. It offers slightly clearer image with less noise. There's a bit of sharpening happening on both of them too, by the way. Super bright purple flower in direct sunlight, very difficult. Neither of these phones, their cameras, mastered this shot. You can see there is a huge amount of color clipping. The clipping of that purple is the worst, with the Samsung slightly better and slightly more detail, bit more contrasty, the Vivo shot, but I think it pulls ahead and the Vivo gets the win for me. Ultra wide shots, we get 50 megapixels with the Vivo, and at times it captures a little more detail, but really there's nothing in it. The 12 megapixel ultra wide, which I believe is a different and upgraded sensor. The only change really to the cameras with the Samsung takes a good shot. However, color accuracy, due to that Zeiss Natural profile, the Vivo has the more correct colors of the sea and the sky. Now that Zeiss color profile isn't always spot on. In this main camera shot, both of them look very good, but it is a Samsung here that has the more true to life colors. This is more accurate to what I saw. Those boats there had that white balance to them, not the more bluish tint we get with the Vivo. Zoom cameras, this is at 10x on both of them. Remember, they only go to 3x optical max, but the Vivo has an advantage, a big one, and it's got a 64 megapixel camera. That means you've got a lot of room to crop in digitally, and that shows. It completely just blows away the Z Fold 6. No competition here. If you take a lot of zoom shots, you want to go for the X Fold 3 Pro. With selfies, I don't really like both of them. The Samsung is overexposed, and then the Vivo has a bit of skin smoothing happening, and I'm sure I had the beautifying options turned off. Low light photos, I thought the Vivo in general was superior. Look at the Samsung, there's this speckle there, there's this noise coming through on the sensor. This shot, it wasn't bad, it's a bit lighter than the Vivo, but it's a bit blurry. And this one, it's overcooked, overdone, and quite a bit brighter than the Vivo, yes, but it's a little bit blurry too. I don't think it's as good as what the Vivo can do in low light. All right, so looking at hardware first, the Vivo is the clear winner when it comes to the cameras, the screens, the slimness, the weight of it, and build quality very similar, but it has a far superior fingerprint reader, or should I say in plural, readers, because there's an inner one, they're ultrasonic. The charge time, far better of course, but software, I feel the Z Fold 6 still has an edge. That's just a bit more optimized. It does seem to work a little bit better with the multitasking. You get a lot more built-in features. I didn't go into depth with that. I do apologize, maybe in another video, but it also has the desktop mode. You have the Galaxy AO features, and it is superior. FunTouch OS, while okay, getting better, you can still multitask really well. Feels a bit clunky at times, but the performance is very good, as you saw from those benchmarks. So if you game a lot too, it's the X Fold 3 Pro. But here's another factor that you need to think about. Stylus support, not here with this model, but the big one is availability. The Z Fold 6, you'll be able to buy it pretty much everywhere. You may even have trade-in deals, which you're not going to get with this. The global version of the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro is a bit difficult to get hold of. I think they have some supply issues, or it's just very slow coming out into the market, which is a bit of a shame. Now, what about myself? Which would I pick out of these two? I don't use a stylus much. I don't really need desktop mode, and I think the software, while a bit clunky at times, is still okay with the X Fold 3 Pro. It's getting better FunTouch OS. This is my pick. But do remember, we have a foldable coming from Xiaomi still. We still have the global version of the Honor Magic V3, which looks like it will, and it probably is, in fact, going to be the thinnest, I think, and lightest phone out there with some impressive hardware. So it's not quite over yet. Samsung's got some very stiff competition. It's their software that keeps them ahead. Oh, and the loudspeakers. They were better, and the haptics with the Samsung, which is another area. So it makes the choice a little difficult there, but thank you so much for watching this in-depth comparison of the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6 and the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro.